Thanks, Amy, for getting us the latest as the race to the White House draws close. Well, for more on this, we have with us Peter Kuznick, live from Washington, D.C. He's a professor of history at the American University. Welcome to WION, Mr. Kuznick.
Glad to be with you.
Now, Mr. Kuznick, at least 80 million Americans have cast the ballot in early voting, and the various polls and pollsters suggesting that it is perhaps a neck-and-neck battle between Trump and Harris, with the latest poll suggesting that Trump may sweep all the 7 swing states. What are you gauging from the latest polls and your interpretation of the race to the White House? Is it really down to the wire?
It is definitely down to the wire. But I'm not seeing any polls that show Trump sweeping the swing states. In fact, the polls that I've seen show Kamala Harris up in all of the swing states or tied, with the possible exception of Arizona, where she trails by a little bit, but is still within the margin of error. So the momentum that I have seen in the past week has clearly been with the Harris campaign. We've had generals, former top Trump officials coming out and saying that he is a fascist and cannot be trusted in the White House. We've had Trump rallies at which comedians and other speakers have said very ugly things, especially about immigrants, Latino immigrants in particular. And so it looks like there's a real mobilization going on among Latino voters in the United States that could shift the ballots in states like Michigan and Pennsylvania, and certainly in Nevada and Arizona. So I don't see any momentum toward Trump, but I see a lot of momentum toward Harris.
Right, Professor Kuznick, it does seem like you've suggested that it's a neck-and-neck battle between both the contestants. You suggest that it is perhaps a choice between democracy and democracy and fascism, but with preserving democracy on the ballot, issues like immigration, economy is also on the ballot, and polls, a YouGov poll suggests that Trump is leading on those issues, and the demographics also suggest that perhaps Harris is losing support amongst the Latino voters, and the blue camp is also skeptical if Harris will be able to maintain the lead amongst the black voters. What do you have to say on that?
First of all, Harris has a very large lead among black voters. The question is, can she get up to the same level that Biden was able to get up to in 2020 among black voters? But the demographic that she's doing the best with is women, especially young women, women under the age of 30. The latest polling that just came out shows that she is up 40 points among women under the age of 30, and they are very likely to come out and vote. So you mentioned also about Latinos. Trump had been doing better than expected among Latinos, although he was still trailing her. However, in the past week, we've had these comments coming out about Puerto Rico being a floating island of garbage that have so angered Puerto Rican and other Latino voters that vote is shifting heavily in favor of Kamala Harris and against Trump. So I see the momentum going in a different direction right now. And I think Harris is benefiting from that.
All right, you spoke of how that Harris has some margin of votes amongst the black voters. In 2020, Joe Biden had at least 92% of black voters and 59% of Latinos. Talking about, you have been adamant on the fact, and you say that Harris has gained momentum, but Harris also faces tough battle of bringing out the non-white supporters, including the Democratic-leaning Asian Americans. And with the early mail-in ballots already cast, at least 80 million Americans have voted already, which also suggests that we have seen a large large turnout of Republican voters coming out and voting for Trump. So how do you see all of that panning out for the Harris camp?
The positive for the Harris camp is that the majority of those voters have been women. Women are very strongly supporting the Democratic ticket. They blame Trump for taking away a right to abortion and other essential health care for women. So I think that bodes well for Harris. However, the fact that Trump did urge his voters this time to vote early, and it looks like the Republicans have been turning out in large numbers, so that bodes well for Trump. But I think, with all of these things, it's just too close to call right now. We just don't know which way this election is going to go. I can envision Harris sweeping all the swing states. However, she doesn't need to do that to win. She needs Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. And the polling shows that she's up significantly in Wisconsin. She's up a little bit in Pennsylvania, or a little bit in Michigan, and they're effectively tied in Pennsylvania. Although the momentum there again has shifted. Where Harris is hurting is among young voters and among Muslim and Arab Americans who are very angry with her for not breaking with Biden in his blind support for Israel.
Right.
And that could come back to hurt her because that's a significant voting bloc in Pennsylvania and in Michigan. But aside from that, I think she's doing well enough to hold on to the blue states, the blue wall, and to make some inroads in the other states.
Right, Professor Kuznick, but the question is also being raised if Trump can perhaps breach the blue wall states, which is extremely pertinent for the race to the White House, with latest polls also suggesting that the gender gap, like you mentioned, Harris, the women voters for Harris, and perhaps the white men voters with non-college degrees for Trump,
yes,
deciding the U.S. election, which will take place in just a few hours from now. But thank you so much for joining us on Beyond with your insights.
Thank you.